You will regret the day you came here.
Right, we're recording. Right, let's get my show notes up. Right, so we're ready. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 602. We record this live every Friday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Got a lively panel. Some of them are wondering why they're on this panel, but I think it's going to be interesting. We've got a couple of guests, and we've got a great normal panelist, Spencer Forum, with us. Everybody else has bunked off. Listeners,
Don't tell him.
Everybody else has bunked off for the summer, obviously. I'm going to let the guests introduce themselves first. Paul Lacey, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers, Paul?
Yeah, thank you very much. Paul Lacey here. I'm a Guinness World Record holder, a WordPress expert, and I'm also the co-host of the WP Builds similar panel podcast where we watch what you've done on Friday and then copy it for Monday. Called This Week in WordPress.
I would do totally the same if I was in your shoes.
Yeah, well, you should put your show on Tuesday.
I didn't think of it. It would make my job easier.
Without your show, ours is cancelled, mate. So it wouldn't work that way round.
Oh, well, there we go. There we are. We've got returning guest panelists. It's been a little bit too long. We've got Jonathan World with us. Jonathan, I know you're wondering why the hell you're here, but you did accept the invite. But there you go. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
I'm happy to. But first, Paul, you left us hanging. What's the record?
I can't say. No, I can. It's something extremely impressive. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Apart from, let's just say I turned up somewhere wearing a Christmas jumper. There was a lot of other people wearing Christmas jumpers, and they counted us, and we won a record. And I got the certificate right there. And if I could turn the camera, I could show you. But legit Guinness World Record holder.
Oh, well, there you go.
I'm so proud. I still had to buy the certificate. They don't just give it to you. I think if you've done something pathetic, like just turned up in.
Come on, let's keep this on track. Come on, Jonathan, let's have your.
It's like even knowing that though, I suspected that might be the case. It's still impressive. It's still impressive to say that you're a record holder. So I am a returning guest. I am always happy to be here. We'll see how I feel after the fact, but I love WordPress and I love causing trouble in WordPress. Been doing so for about 16 years now. So
there you go.
See what's next.
Spencer Forum. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
This is Spencer Forum. No, or Foreman. I love you're so cute when you call me that every week. I think by now it's my thing. You can find me at launchflows.com. Excuse me, or
you can have. I can call you something else if you want me to.
Call me late for dinner.
Before we go into the stories, I just want to mention one of my major sponsors, and that's Castus. Castus, if you're looking to get into podcasting, and you really should, not only for yourself but for your clients, you're going to need a podcasting platform. And Castus, I moved to them about 3-4 months ago, paid out of my own pocket. I moved there, and basically when I heard that Matt Medeiros was going to join them, I thought, if it's good enough for Matt, it should be good enough for me. So I joined them. And the pricing was about half what I was paying. Plus their interface is really slick and they're really helpful. They went out their way to get about 600 shows moved from my existing platform onto theirs, and they were extremely helpful. We had some discussions that decided they found out my great, almost 3 years main sponsor, Kinster, were ending their sponsorship, and they said, we want to come on board, and they have. So if you're, like I say, just go over there, have a look at what they're going to got to offer, and you're going to be blown away. So let's go and look at story one. WordPress forces updates versus auto updates, abusing use. Oh my God! This I thought this was a tavern story, but it's from somewhere else. It could be a tavern story, but a terrible title. But Spencer, what did you think of this one?
Oh, where do I begin?
Oh,
Here's the problem. The problem is I have 3 kids. I think Paul has a couple, right? And John has a couple. 2. So as a parent, one of the hardest things is the do as I say, not as I do problem. Okay. You can't really teach your kids how to be good human beings when you do exactly the opposite of what you tell them they must do. And that's what Automatic does on a regular basis. This is one example of it, because we've talked about lots of other examples of how the benefits of the auto updates can serve people. And I was really surprised because I don't think it was in this article by Tony, but I saw Triple J, who I think is really calm and rational about everything. He was piping in favor of this. I find this absolutely offensive on multiple levels. The essential thing that happened was there was a security patch, an exploit and so forth that needed attention, right? Rather than handling it like WordFence does, which is to put the word on the street right away, shut this bad boy down, they decided to use the back door that's only available to them to force an auto update on people. Now, I don't care if there was people in your underwear drawer and they found it. That's not an excuse or an emergency to auto update people when the explicit terms for everybody else in the ecosystem is there's no way in hell you're allowed to do that. If any other company had done this, they would have been over. I mean, we talked about the week before last, the poor guy who made the mistake of coming in and like updating his plugin with more features, and all hell broke loose. Now I see John Wolf. John Wolf is already crossing his eyes on this because John and I have had many, many theoretical discussions in years past, and he works for Automatic. So I appreciate that he's here. But this behavior is unacceptable because there's 3 things that they do wrong. Number 1, they break the rule of not allowing your plugin to phone home. Only Jetpack gets a pass on phone home other than Elementor. But the reason Elementor got a pass on it was because they could say, fuck you, sorry for the kids, to Automatic.
I did know Jonathan worked for Automatic. I think after this it's going to be he did work for Automatic. Jonathan.
But hold on, I'm not done.
Well,
the other thing that it does that's wrong.
Had a good rant, for God's sake.
I just want to finish my thought. There's only 4 of us today. Give me a break. The other thing that it does wrong is, besides phoning home, is it's violating the trust of the people who have now been told to use this new auto update feature, which we were debating 6 or 8 months ago when it came out. Like, should things auto update or should they not? You should have faith that the only reason it'll auto update is because it's for good. And now we see that they're abusing it for their own purpose. And when I say abusing, I don't mean like they're stealing money, but they're violating your trust in the same way like Google and Apple violate your trust when they use your personal data, but they prevent marketers from using it even though they're selling it. And the third thing they did wrong is that Jetpack is just every day showing more and more that it is a Trojan horse for the marketing efforts of Automatic. Sorry, but it's true. Because when you put that plugin in, it's just essentially like their monetization strategy in a plugin. No other plugin except Elementor can do anything close to that. And when even Yoast, who gets away with murder, like we talked about last week, Yoast put in that footer to sell stuff that like.
Oh, he would never do anything dicey, would he?
I mean, I'm up for healthy debate, and I could give a rat's ass because I tell everybody never put in Jetpack no matter what for all these reasons. I just find it really strange in an open source community.
Is there any chance you've had a good go at this, Jonathan? What's your thoughts about this, Jonathan?
So first, I no longer work at Automatic.
Oh, that's good because you would do after this show.
No, he's just had a message. He's just had the SMS.
That's not true. I spent 18 months. It's been a little over a month and a half, and I'm back out on my own now.
Where are you at?
I'm just doing my own thing at the moment, exploring some opportunities.
Because I know you still had your show with WooCommerce and stuff. So
yeah. Oh, I mean, I still love WooCommerce,
and you got that really cool jacket.
Thank you. Yes.
This
is yes. So that's, I mean, easier said than done, but I think I'd probably say the same things, whether I was Automatic or not, but with a little bit of, a little bit of extra weight if I was still there. What I'm interested in this whole situation is like, if you would this be a big issue if this had happened to a different plugin? Because this difference between auto updates and forced updates is, I think, worth calling out here, right? Because what we're not talking about was the nature of the issue. Like, Apple's done this a couple of times, and I think they did it with Zoom. Like when you think about WordPress as an operating system, it's like at some point, what types of things do we want it to do? I think this is convoluted because it is about Jetpack. But what I'm hearing you say, Spencer, is bigger issues with Jetpack as a whole, less about the specifics of what happened here. So I don't know the specifics of what the issue was, but what's interesting to me, it's like, do we want WordPress? Do we want .org to have the ability to do like forced updates for specific situations? And for me, like, that's something that you wouldn't want them to use regularly. But yeah, when I think about the ecosystem as a whole, and if you think about WordPress as an operating system, disconnecting it from Jetpack for a moment, like that's the part of the discussion I think is interesting.
I mean, just to clarify so that the listeners get the story, this was the Jetpack plugin had an exploitable vulnerability. Here's where, although I don't disagree with your point, let's clarify what the difference is as far as the real world of everyone else.
Sure.
Automatic took it upon themselves because they could to do a forced update. Nobody else who had a plugin with an exploit in it could do that.
Okay, well, but that I need to. So when you say automatic, so there is like one of the things that I appreciate, and I spent 18 months inside. There is a proper firewall between .org and like the Jetpack team. I remember working on WooCommerce, and there were times where we would like want things done, and if anything, .org is like meaner to the folks at Automatic asking for things. Like, I remember asking for something pretty basic, and it was like, oh well, no, you got to do this and you got to do that. So like when I look at this, it's like Jetpack had a vulnerability, they disclosed it, and then .org said, okay, we're going to do this. And you can say what you want, like, but
all right then. So Paul, I love the Jetpack crew at WordCamps. They're such nice people. It's just, but when it comes to the plugin, I just think it's a bit of shit myself. I would never put it on a client's website. It's just a total piece of crap software. What's your views on this then, Paul?
I think it's really nice that they did it for us. Actually, no. No, I think.
Are you trying to get a job with Automatic, are you, Paul? You know, you've got to do some more bum licking than that if you're going to do Automatic. Right.
First of all, I think Jonathan is right that it wasn't Automatic that did the update. It was the .org team as such, because on the Twitter thread, some people from Automatic were like, no, it was actually nothing to do with us. But we have in the UK this newspaper called the Daily Mail, which is, we also have this thing called the BBC, right? And there's a guy on the BBC who used to interview people who were reading the Daily Mail, like, hey, I see you're reading the Daily Mail. Are you angry yet? Because it's one of those newspapers that basically you read it and it makes you angry, right? And I think
that's his whole purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're talking about, right? Newspapers. But no, I think what it is that like an article like this comes from one side of the whole argument, and it's like, hey, they shouldn't have done this, and this, this breaks, this and this rule and whatnot, and this is going to make these people angry, and they shouldn't do that, and they shouldn't have that power. And then you could read another article that was like, the heroes over at the .org team saved us all. What wonderful people they are. And I think the fact is that you can get some facts on something. You can say, right, this is what happens. Here's a fact, and that backs up my argument. And then someone else can go, well, here's what also happened, and I've got a fact, and that backs up my argument. And then basically they block each other on Twitter and never have a conversation, and nothing gets resolved. I think that's kind of like what this is that it just signifies that this is a system. It's not perfect. The world isn't perfect. And sometimes people have to do stuff, and sometimes people make mistakes. And also sometimes people have agendas. And somewhere mixed in this is what happened. And I don't understand the ins and outs of actually what happened. But to me, it's like I don't really care.
Well, yeah. Spencer's right, really. It
probably is.
It shows there's definitely an in-group of people and an in-group of plugins that get special treatment.
I think it's naive too, by the way. I just want to pipe in here. Although you two are factually correct that maybe that's the .org team that did the action, it's very naive and I think sort of disingenuous to suggest that Automatic does not have authority over the .org team's ultimate decision.
I'm blocking you on Twitter now.
This plugin is the Jetpack plugin from Automatic. And at the end of the day, nobody would believe for a second that if like Spencer Foreman's launch flow
Spencer, you don't understand. This is the jewel in the crown. This is the driving force behind WordPress. Jetpack.
We've seen who gets excommunicated.
You're just not on message, Spencer. You're just not.
Spencer, how many installs does LaunchFlows have versus Jetpack?
Let's use another free plugin. Like let's use W3TC, right? Frederick Towns, who. Yep. You'll find my videos there, and I talked to Frederick and helped him with the marketing of that before. That had over 5 million installs, okay? Yep. It's probably more than that, but they only stop at 5 million, okay?
I know, yeah.
Frederick has moved on to greener pastures, and I think Andrew Palmer had something to do with the subsequent thing. If that plugin had an exploit, guess what would happen? It would be delisted, but it would not be forced update. That is 100% factually based. That's how it always goes. You go like this, but like we've talked about this so many times. I mean, if a plugin does something wrong, it gets delisted. That's what happens. It gets cut out of the system.
We're not going to abandon all the users though.
But they don't do that. What happens is they send out a notice, and then WordFence or one of the other security companies comes up with a big notice. They say, this thing is poison. Take it off your system. There has never been, and I will stand corrected if I'm wrong.
I wish you had to pick the caching plugin as an example, because that's not the...
Nobody who has a private plugin has ever had a forced update. Never. Yeah. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Have we had the capability to do that, though? Like, how many forced updates have there been so far?
It doesn't matter. There's one that we're talking about. Like, but you can't.
I just want to. Let's get on.
This is the first time, maybe.
Yeah, let's get on to the next story. But Spencer is right. To me, this really
is a precedent here.
This really is a breaking of trust, because they said they would only do. I think I am correct. I might be wrong though, but they made out, or they made it clear that they would only do this for security reasons for the core. Yep. They're not some bloody plugin which they think in their madness drives the growth of WordPress.
Well, I don't
particularly. They particularly favour. They were going to, come off it, Jonathan.
So I have two things here that I'll just let it rest. Yeah. The first is, it does matter to me what the nature of the update was. And the assumption, Jetpack aside for a moment, is like, what's good? Again, I think about this as WordPress as an operating system. What's good for the ecosystem as a whole? And to leave a bunch of folks like vulnerable, I don't care who the plugin is. It's like, that should very rarely be used. But there are times and situations where, so it does matter what it is. I'm assuming that this was a big deal and would have left a lot of exposure and was worth doing.
By whose standards? Who's the arbiter?
Not Jetpacks.org standard.
I'm saying none of us in the community got to say anything about it. Somebody there in .org made a choice. We think it's important. But you know what? Guess what? Some other private plugin author might have the same thing, and we don't have the power to force an update. You see what I mean? That's the difference.
Right, on to story 2. Will Apple end the newsletter boom? What did you think of this one, Paul?
It's probably not going to be a popular opinion, but I hope that they do. Do you know? Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm done with all this stuff where I'm getting tracked all the time. I'll probably get an advert, something about Jetpack after this this episode or something pop up. Now, I care about it and I don't. Like, conceptually, I'm like, we should stop this whole model. We should just watch TV again, and the adverts come at us, and we go, "Oh, that's a nice toilet seat. I'll go and buy that," or whatever. But I'm for canceling all that unless it makes me poor. So if it turns out that makes me not be able to earn money, then sod that. I'll go with the yeah. You can take whatever you want from everyone. No, that's it's a difficult one. I don't know what the world would look like with it and without it in comparison. And there's also a couple of things as well here. Like, for sure, there's an agenda. So the agenda might be like, oh, okay, so if we look really nice and we're trying to stop all this privacy stuff, then
well, isn't this because we had a couple of weeks ago the hypocrisy of Apple. We had a story that when it came to the Chinese government, Apple gave the Chinese government everything they wanted, every bit of data about every poor sod that's got Apple phone in China. They just, you could have the lot. And if they want to throw them into a concentration camp, just get on with it. These bastards at Apple, they try and make out that they care a fuck about your information, but they've shown that, when it comes to a really particularly unpleasant regime in China, they give them anything, isn't it? Just a load of bullshit, Paul.
Yeah, they need, I mean, at the end of the day, someone somewhere has got a spreadsheet that shows that this is the best thing for them to do for their bottom line. And, it's kind of a move to say, well, we can take power away from Google. We can take power away from Facebook, perhaps. It's not something I massively understand. But as an individual, it's kind of like annoying that I'm getting tracked all the time. And especially in emails, I didn't even know there was pixels in emails. I knew if I clicked something, surely there must be a pixel, but not that I just received the email. That's really annoying.
I've been using hey.com for about since shortly after it came out, and it shows you, and it's like, it's interesting, the psychological, like, these ones are tracking me, these ones aren't.
Yeah.
And this is basically taking that mainstream, right? Where now it just won't let it happen. I don't think this is going to affect the newsletter boom. Like, if you're like, for me, is if you want to get something, you're going to have a little bit less insight, I suppose, into how effective something is. But ultimately, you have good calls to action. Like, I guess you have a little bit less. But I don't know. I think I think some of that stuff is just. I'm like you in that regard, Paul. It's like, it feels kind of icky sometimes, where it's like, all right, guys, come on. I don't want to just go back to where the ads were the way that they were. Like, there is value in things being more targeted, but I think there's better ways to pull it off.
Yeah, opting in and opting out. I think these tools like Hey that allow you to, or different browsers that allow you to see what's coming in and make those decisions. Even if you can kind of, in the future, there's some kind of tool where you can kind of create your avatar of the different categories of information holistically that comes at you, then that's probably the solution where it's going to go at some point. Allow us to choose what's useful to share and what's not. But I don't think that it's going to end anything, because smart people always figure out a way to evolve through these things and come up with.
There was a podcast player that I had that gave me the option of whether or not to show ads, and I kept it on. Like, it was like, and eventually I turned it off because it was like getting annoying, but it's like, it was a good way to be like, I expected it to give me some discovery, right? Where it's like, show me some podcasts I'm interested in. I was like, this is
my adverts are never annoying, Jonathan. I'm so Spencer, what did you think of this?
I mean, everybody had a good point. I mean, at this stage of the game, one has to. Hello. It's echoing back. One has to assume that you're being tracked everywhere. We joke about it, but if I say some name of a feminine hygiene product or a dog food, I don't have a dog or a woman in the house other than my electronic devices at the moment. But immediately thereafter, I will see ads in my Chrome browser or Facebook for that thing. So I'm being tracked up the wazoo, and I'm sure everybody realizes this. So from the standpoint of benefiting the public, it seems likewise disingenuous to suggest they're doing some public good here. What they're doing is they're clamping down on the external benefits for people outside of Apple's channel. That's all that's happening. Tracking will continue. It's never going to go away as long as it's legal. And it's just going to be servicing those that provide the channel instead of the third party. That's it.
After that Chinese story, every time bloody Apple PR come out with this bullshit that they care about people's privacy, I just my teeth start to grind a bit, and I think, to give me a break, you fuckers. You don't care. You don't care anything about people's privacy.
These are a cynical bunch.
Yeah, I am.
I mean, somebody's got to be like the kid in the Emperor's New Clothes story, and that's what we mostly do here. It's like all the BS in the world isn't going to get by. Like, we have a recording of what you just said or did. That's the opposite of what you said you were going to do, and that's what's happening here.
Right, let's go on to story 3 before we go further. Oh, this is a juicy one. I'm sure the panel's going to have some opinions about this. I think the gauntlet has been definitely slapped on the table here. Elementor Cloud, the fastest way to create WordPress website. What did you think of this one, Jonathan?
Well, I always get a kick out of how many hosts say that they're the fastest. Like, it's like at some point, not everyone can be the fastest. I like without looking into it in detail, I like the move. I like the move for Elementor. I'm not personally a big fan of Elementor, like as a product, but like if I think,
why is that, Jonathan?
I mean, for me as an end user, I found it pretty confusing. Like it's too much of like a buy-in to that ecosystem. It feels different to me than what I'm used to in WordPress. So that's more of like a personal, like it was in the past year. I was like, oh, let me try this out. And I found it kind of overwhelming as some, yeah. So anyway, and I also there's some bigger questions about some of their plays in terms of the ecosystem. I like, though, the move of having hosting that's more and more focused on a specific audience. And there are a lot of people who love Elementor. So this feels like a logical play.
Yeah, it does really. So what do you reckon, Paul? What do you reckon about this? It was pretty obvious this is where they're going to go, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm also not like a big fan of Elementor at all. I'm a Beaver Builder user myself, but Elementor are huge innovators. You know, they've made a bunch of mistakes, and you know, a lot of their users are quite unhappy about instability and things breaking a lot and all that kind of thing. But they do know their customer personas really, really well, and they know what they need. I don't know if this is the right answer for them, actually, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But in terms of like, there's one way you could look at this to say, okay, they're taking on Wix or Squarespace or something, or probably Automatic, maybe. And then there's another way you can look at it and say, okay, we want to keep innovating, but 90% of our support tickets are basically incompatibilities with the thing we made.
Yep.
With other plugins. And Elementor are pretty people in the know. I'm not really one of them who has this direct conversations, but they're quite a closed shop. They don't collaborate that much compared to a lot of some of the other plugins with other systems and stuff like that. They've got their own thing, they've got their own stuff that they're pushing out, and they're thinking about their customers who are designers and site builders, and they're worrying about those a lot of the time. So on one side you could say, okay, so if Elementor was to go and buy a bunch of other plugins and make this kind of closed system, then they're sort of taking on something like Webflow, and it would probably be a very good stable solution if they weren't attracting so many DIY people to come in and chuck every other marketing message plugin that they decide to add into the mix.
Well, let's be frank about it. If it wasn't for the total mess, which is Gutenberg, the 3-year journey to nowhere, that goes on and on and on. It's like the Long March in China, isn't it? You know, it's an endless series of bloody balls ups from the great leader, isn't it? You know, but you know, we've got to face truth here, Paul. You know, Gutenberg should have been done about 18 months ago, but you know, we still never know when it's ever going to be bloody properly finished, do we? You know.
No. But as for Elementor and like who they're targeting, that's the only thing I question here is like, I think that the majority of their customers are designers and agencies. The ones who pay. I think if you see Elementor's growth, you see Elementor included in loads of Envato products and stuff like that. But those products bundle in the free things to stop people having to buy the pro version of Elementor. So I don't think that Elementor has a user base that is like a Wix type person. So I don't know how that's going to work out in terms of numbers. But if you're looking at getting acquired again, you know, they got 15 million at some point, then you got to do something in hosting, build a product, and someone goes, oh, that looks interesting, I'll buy it. You know, at some point, I've heard rumors, I'm not going to say exactly what I know, but I've heard rumors about Automatic looking to buy massive brands just to basically take them out of the direction they might be going. So you could even have Automatic buying Elementor at some point because they've got way more money.
I can see him doing that. I can see him clearly doing that.
But the other thing, just as last point, is that I watched the talk with Brian Crosgard was interviewing Matt Mullenweg on WordCamp EU, and I really got the impression, because Matt Mullenweg was talking about some of the big players who don't give anything back. And it was pretty clear to me that he was talking about Elementor, and Automatic is in bed with some other brands. It gives a bunch of its plugins to WooCommerce, and it has other deals with some of the other companies and stuff like that. And I think that Elementor are going to find that they're on their own. They haven't got any They're not going to have any friends with the other hosting companies. They're not going to have friends with Automatic, and they probably will, as Spencer has said before, and a lot of other people have said, fork WordPress, and they'll go off on their own. They might have a big legal battle about it at some point, but I think that's where they're going to find themselves, and they are going to try and create their own thing. And I think they probably haven't got much choice because they're just not seen as the good guys by the in crowd of the big companies who are controlling everything. I wish them all the best of luck, though, because they go ahead and create these innovative, quite mind-blowing things within WordPress that aren't for me, but for some people, they've empowered people to do some pretty damn awesome things. So good luck to them, and I hope that they can go off and do their own thing, because Matt Mullenweg is always saying, well, you can fork it if you want. And it always seems like an empty kind of, you try it, you try and fork it. Well, actually, maybe they can. Maybe they can, and maybe they can make it
well,
work.
They're the only force in WordPress that could probably do something.
Quick comment on that.
That's why, just to finish off, Jonathan, that's why Matt Mullenweg hates them so much, because he knows they're they're the only real threat that he faces.
All right, well,
I don't know if he hates
them or not. That's why he hates them so much.
You don't know that he hates them or not.
Oh, he's made it. In his ways, made it quite clear.
I don't think that they would ever fork WordPress. Paul, I think it's a good insight on your perspective. I do think that they are a little bit of an island, and this move, I hadn't thought about the hosting angle. Yeah, this is not good for the relationships in the hosting space. It's going to be interesting to see what happens longer term with this, because it's like, if you're going to do this well, you do have to play nicely with others.
Well, you think that hasn't been gone down? It's gone down like a bucket of sick with the hosting providers. What happens when WordPress.com really shows what it's about? You think that's not gone down very well? You just wait when they go public. Automatic goes public,
yeah,
and the curtain really gets pulled.
It's a different product, though.
It's a different product,
if you buy something, if you buy a product from WordPress.com, you're buying into a Wix type idea. And if you look at the Liquid Web and GoDaddy, they are saying, okay, we're now aiming at people who have heard of WordPress as a piece of software, and that you can do anything with it.
Yeah.
And they're creating these packages that you can do anything with their kind of packaged up version. So I think Automatic and GoDaddy and Liquid Web can all share a beer at the bar together and have a good time, but I don't think Elementor will get invited.
Oh, shame. What do you reckon? They're not going to be invited to the bars, Spencer. No. What do you reckon?
I have a unique spin on this. And first of all, I enjoy the fact that this has happened, because this is the second bet I've won from last year, because I laid a bet on this happening last year. And I think this is phase one of Elementor's move on their own, but also with a twist that I'm going to tell you, to turn the tables. This is their little beta to prove out the point that they can take as many of the kids from the party back to their house to have an after party and do better by reversing the table. So contrary to what Jonathan Wald just said, I believe 1000% the next move is to fork the install of WordPress and run their curated version of it. But here's my twist. Okay. Once they prove that they'll get the kids to come to the party and they can provide a turnkey hosted solution with all of the benefits of all their, creativity, they have $15 million of VC money right now. Automatic is capitalized right now at $3 billion. Wix is over $15 billion. The next move is Wix comes in and buys Elementor and takes over the forked version of WordPress with Elementor as the base. And here's why. This is classic Larry Ellison, or this is classic, the Gordon Gekko. Not to split it up, but because they have 5 times the capital. Then they get all of the goodwill of Elementor and all of the goodwill of the people like me who will say, this is where you go for the logic of a company that knows what the fuck it's doing, instead of what Automatic has been doing with this organic picnic thing run by the founder that can't make up his mind whether we can trust him or not with things like Jetpack. I would send everybody I know over to the hosted, backed by Wix version of Elementor.
Oh my goodness.
With WooCommerce and everything else installed. Why? Because what we want here, what I'm doing with WP Launchify, that was my first bet, is trying to say, when you come from space down to planet Earth and say, oh, I need a CMS, you look at Shopify and Wix and Weebly and Squarespace and everything else, you immediately understand what the hell is going on. It's the platform with this features, these pricing. You come to WordPress, first you got to figure out, is it .com or .org? Then at .com, it's hosting, but you really don't get everything at hosting. Then you got to start putting in plugins, and some things work. And then you go to .org, and it's a complete other shit show of like, what do I do? How do I do it? Then you've got things like, certain people
actually, when it comes to the membership learning management, I know a company, and I know that's actually solving that problem, Spencer.
But that's the point. The point is, every other platform with $3 billion of capitalization would have had this figured out by now, because all of those exist. So my bet is that the guy who Matt Mullenweg started sticking his thumb in the eye to 2 months ago is going to say, hey, you know what sounds really good? That Israeli team has got a good idea. Let me throw $1 billion.
What you're saying isn't totally implausible, because they're both, I've heard rumors, because they are both Israeli-based companies.
Watch Wall Street. And watch the scene where Gordon Gekko and the British guy go at each other for billions of dollars to see who's going to get the company.
I have had certain things sent to me about Wix and Elementor, actually. So, Jonathan, what do you reckon? You want to finish off with this?
I would take that bet, but I do find your perspective interesting. It's interesting. I don't think it's plausible for different reasons, but I'd take the bet. It's
the fact that Mullenweg went after the founder of Wix, talking about what they copied, when Wix has 5 times the profit and capitalization. It's ridiculous. It's like the ant screaming at the elephant about the elephant, stealing its thunder. There's such a disconnect from reality here. What the problems are with WordPress is that WordPress's potential is unrealized.
It's not that surprising when the great leader thinks Jetpack is.
But I'm just saying,
the driving. Thinks Jetpack is the driving force of WordPress. Come off it.
How cool would it be for Wix to have 2 platforms? They got the Wix platform that serves a certain type of, got to have it customer. And then you got the WordPress platform, which under the control of Elementor's mindset would be for those of us who develop for clients. And we get the sanity of leadership that understands what we need and demand in terms of like behavior, rather than this who do you know kind of random stuff. I would find that so attractive, I would jump on it and recommend it to anybody, because that's all what we want.
Yeah, we need to go for our break. We're going for our break. We're coming back. Got some other good stories. Got a story from Jonathan as well. We'll be back in a few moments. Oh, God, he's gone red there. It's gone white. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. Paul looks totally bemused and puzzled. John's gone white as a sheet, and Spencer, I think he's lost the plot.
Spencer's already white. I haven't lost any plot.
All right, he's just on a total rant.
I was just wondering, Jonathan Denwood.
Yeah.
Just because we've got 2 Jonathans here today. I've just been watching on HBO Max, which I shouldn't be able to do because I'm in the UK, but I've got friends, And I've been watching this QAnon documentary. I'm wondering, is Spencer on some kind of forum where there's like a QAnon WordPress type situation, and he's like getting drops every day, and he's like,
I mean, it's interesting.
You should start a YouTube channel, mate, and you could monetize the drops or something.
But this isn't conspiracy. What I'm talking about is, if you looked at the history of how large companies acquire properties,
I totally get what you're saying.
Okay, you've got such an opportunity here for a company with experience in the domain space like Wix to come in and say, what is the unique proposition of WordPress and this open source that nobody else has, or at least hasn't had since Red Hat software with Linux?
Yep.
Open source is Automatic's Achilles heel. It's been from day one. You can't have such stupidity and big balls when your software is open source, because anybody who has the means can come in and pick it up and do better. Look at what happened with WooCommerce. WooCommerce was forked by WooThemes, and then you never heard of the original authors anymore. In the same way, if you got the money to give jobs to all the qualified engineers and software contributors over at the Elementor version hosted by and paid for by Wix, what do you think? They're not going to take the jobs to go improve the software there? So it's not a conspiracy. It's more like a reality check of, this is what
it's insane. Why do you think the great leader hates Elementor with such passion? And he really hates them to the core. And anybody
you don't know that he hates them.
I've been told by a few people that
okay, I worked at Automatic for 18 months.
Well, I've got better sources than
the fact that you're not working there is interesting, because I know other people who've been on the show and other people I know directly, and I'm not comparing you, but I'm saying, when you look at Glassdoor, which compares what jobs are like, I think there was, last time we were on the show, it was how many open jobs at Automatic? 98 or 198? There was an ungodly number of open jobs. Ask yourself, how is that possible? How could there be that many open jobs at a company? And why does it, the normal thing that happens is people come and then they go. Now, I'm not asking you to comment on this, but I'm saying facts speak loudly here. And then when you look at the anonymous comments on Glassdoor, it backs up the fact. There is a disconnect of leadership so that people don't feel comfortable or confident that things are going in the direction they should be or could be at this point. And certainly when you're starting to pick fights with a company 5 times your size in your space, and one of your largest plugins go off and start forking your software, it's time to start thinking that the adults in the room should get involved and say, what's really happening here? And then finally, this Jetpack plugin, when you get caught with your hand in that cookie jar 5 times this year, we've talked about, at least, Jetpack did this and Jetpack did that and Jetpack got away with the other. Come on. I mean, would you want to be in a car driving down the highway with your family when the driver was a drunk and out of control maniac like this? Of course not.
All right, let's get on with this, shall we?
I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't be excommunicated because I don't have anything in the repository.
You had a good go at it. Right, let's go on. Let's go forward and let's talk something really important. One of my other sponsors.
And by the way, I didn't name any names this time.
Yeah, well, you that'd be the end of you if you did that.
You'd be fine. You'd be okay.
I'm not getting any more letters or complaints.
Hey, I'm really not getting any more
bloody letters.
Shut up, that Foreman guy from naming names. It'd be a real shame if something happened.
I'm not taking the heat for you. Conversio. Let's talk about Conversio.
AW's going to wish he never came on today.
Yeah, right. It's a great hosting company. If you're looking for real performance for yourself or for your clients, I'm talking about medium to large WooCommerce websites, large learning management systems, enterprise level WordPress hosting. These are the people to look at. They showed me their back end. I know some people that have utilized their hosting in quite stressful performance orientated scenarios, and they're just been blown away by the support and the quality hosting that they provide. They're also giving a great deal to the WP-Tonic tribe. All the links are going to be in the show notes and they're all over the website. If you click one of the links, you'll be taken to a specific landing page, and they're offering 30% off any of their plans. And it's the first time they've ever done that. So you really want to have a look at it and take them up. And if you've got a website for a client that you really need performance hosting, real performance hosting, not just cache, not some crappy cache platform, go and have a look at them. All right. So on to number 4. Future-proof 9 rules for a human age of automation. So what did you think of this one, Spencer?
I actually thought this was really well done, because some of these things we've talked about before, there's no denying that Boston Robotics, doggy robot with the head that's a hand, is going to come for you and your children. But in the meantime, if you're looking about your employment concerns, you need to take on an understanding of the human relationship part of whatever you're good at or skill that you're interested in. Because I think as more and more things become automated, and I'll give you an example, like voicemail or phone jail. we crave the human part of it. I don't know about you, but they mention it in here as well. Those automated bots are likewise as infuriating as voice jail. You call up a business, you know there's 2-3 people that work there, and they got a voice jail thing that requires you to do 87 choices to just even leave a number, versus if you just picked up the phone and said, hey, what's up? Spence, oh, sure, he's gone to lunch. Fine. Similarly, with this bots are cool if they're used in a way that enhance the experience. Like, what do you need? I need this. Okay, cool. Here's the URL. Versus pretending it's a human for the first 5 minutes, only for you to figure out that you've been talking to a bot and you're no farther along. So I think this is a great thing for anybody to read, because I have kids that are coming up through college age and so forth. And we are definitely no longer in the world where, you know, jobs that could be done automated are going to be done by people. But I think there'll be an infinitely number of new opportunities for humans to interface.
Well, I think this is the big question of the 21st century, really. Is it going to be similar to the last age of automation, mass production, where there was a flood of new jobs, or have we got to the stage where there isn't going to be a lot of newer type jobs, that there's just a large proportion of the population just won't be able to find employment? You know, that is the big question of the next 20 to 30 years. So, Paul, what did you think of this article?
Well, I watched this documentary just the other day, and it was actually projecting around 8 years into the future, and there were all these things called Terminators, and basically there was this big muscly guy was in it as well and everything. And it seemed to me that there wasn't, like, what I was expected, and what this article tells me is that if you were like a social worker or something like that, or, you know, worker, you know, things that humans do, then you'll probably be all right. And that does sound like good short-term advice, but I didn't see that in that documentary there was many social workers or artists who were all doing fine, and it was everyone else that was getting killed by the Terminators. So I think we're all getting taken over, and this definitely seems like a good short-term view. But one thing that gives me a lot of confidence, having played with the block editor and Gutenberg quite a lot, is that I don't even think Elon Musk can create an AI that can take over and figure out the block editor completely. So I think as long as we stay in WordPress, we're all going to be fine.
Well, yeah,
good HBO Max.
You get a gold star for that remark. Jonathan, what did you reckon?
The robot would explode from frustration.
So I've read a quarter of the piece as we're talking. This seems really well done. I'm going to read it later. I don't have any comments at the moment.
Right, keep reading then. So I don't know what to do. I thought it made some good points. I think the points it made were well placed. It's just the forces behind it. But I think underneath it, that is the big question mark of the early to middle 21st century. Mm-hmm. It's really quite clear we've got two paths. It's almost something out of the Matrix. We've got the red pill or the blue pill. And it's really coming to the crux. We've got really two paths that we can go down. One path is going to, people are always going to have problems, and it's a bit like in America where you're progressive. You're socialist. All I want for America is America to become more like Canada, for God's sake. I really don't want it. Is Canada a socialist, communist country? I don't think so. But that's all I'm looking for, is America to become more like bloody Canada, for God's sake, without the dreadful weather. So there we go.
I think that's an extremely relevant point. I'm not sure how, but I'm going to watch it back, and I reckon I can find something connecting whatever you're talking about there. So.
Yeah, don't you worry. What you're saying is I'm just waffling. I'm well known for my waffling. Right, on to the next story. So what are we doing for time? Well, I think
we've got Jonathan Wald's article.
Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to jump to that. So yeah,
that's what I love about shows like this. I didn't know, Jonathan, you were coming on today, and it's just great to meet new people. I love this kind of thing when we're just coming out of this whole lockdown thing. You still get to meet new people. It's awesome.
So, right, let's talk about Jonathan's an app store for WordPress. So, Jonathan, what made you decide to write this article? What triggered you to get the keyboard tapping away, Jonathan?
It's something I've been thinking about for years. It's like Spencer and I have chatted about it multiple times over the years, and specifically what I'm trying to do with this piece is just get my ideas out of my head into paper, right? Like I was these are different things I'm thinking about. These are some of the problems that I see in the space. I don't know what the answers are. I have ideas, but let me first try to articulate some of this. And yeah, I found it a really helpful exercise, and I'm looking specifically, okay, what can I do to help solve some of these problems? But the first step in my intent with the piece was like, all right, let me do the work of just getting it out of my head in hopefully a coherent way that can lead to some discussions. And for me at this stage, I'm especially interested in like, what am I missing? Like, I feel I'm a bit biased towards my logic being sound, but I'm like, what doesn't make sense about it? I'm in the stage right now where it's like, until you get the ideas out there, you can't, you can't get input, you can't get feedback back. So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about it.
Well, before you do that, what do you think are some of the key things that you would like to happen? Like one or two key things that you think if they change, they would improve the situation for all the users of WordPress?
Okay, good. So let's focus. So part of the key of this piece is the different audiences, right? The users, the extenders, the builders, whatever you want to call them, and then the hosting providers. And for the users, so I tend to spend most of my time thinking about the hosting providers. For the users, it's pretty simple. I want people to have the best options available to them, and I want to help people. I want to see, and this is for myself as well as a user, I want to make it easier to make better decisions about the options available to you. And in practice, this looks like things like improving the algorithm in search when you're looking for a plugin, right? Like, and when you're looking at a bunch of different plugins, how do you choose between those options? I think there are very like practical things. The other day I was looking for a plugin, and I've been in WordPress 16 years, and it took me some time to make a decision about which one I was going to use. And at the end of the day, there's a fair amount of it's like subconscious instinct more than objective. I think that can be a lot better for users. I think we can give them better options, including the premium plugins that currently, unless you know where to go, you don't know that they exist. And within that growing list of options, I think we can help people make better decisions about what they choose.
Yeah. So what did you think of this, Paul?
I think it's a really good idea. And one thing is like absolutely true. I think unless you're in the know, it's difficult to know what the good solutions are.
Well, it's a good idea, Paul, but unfortunately, the great leader totally won't move his arse.
It depends how you frame it.
He just won't allow any change or any possibility of change to happen.
Let me frame it in a way that he might not be able to say no. All right. So you some kind of board is formed. It's a complete non-profit organization that does this thing. It's separate from WordPress, right? But it gives you all these, useful recommendations, just like every other app store does, like Netflix does, like HBO Max does, and basically it's super useful and it's what you want, because currently it's kind of like the old Yellow Pages of.
We can't have any.
No, but listen.
Paul, you're not on. Paul, you're not on message. The leader said he's a benign dictator. He's not going to let you just haven't got the message, Paul.
Yeah, but listen, he wants these organizations to give back, right? So maybe you could frame it that there is this separate entity that runs this thing, because why not? There's no rules to say you can't do it, right? And then you go 5% of every plugin or product sold is 5 for the future. How can Matt say no to that? He just did a talk all about it on WordCamp Europe. These big companies, they can do what they want, but give back 5 for the future. Frame it like that. And then have to hear the argument why we can't, or someone can't go off and do this. and get applauded for the innovation and the giving back to the core, why not? You know, I'm sure there's some reasons. Spencer's laughing. Is like, right, I'm going to say,
laughing at you. I'm laughing at your comments are legit. I'm laughing at whom we're speaking about.
Well, we're laughing, both of me, Spence, because of the reality, isn't it?
Like this is like telling a 54-year-old divorced guy how amazing getting married for the first time is, and it's like, let me tell you some stories. But I think Paul and JW, I'm going to use JW for simplicity, are both correct about the basic premises underlying this, but I refer back to my Wix strategy by saying wrong people, wrong company, wrong place. There is no doubt at this stage that Automatic cannot, will not, should not, never could execute an app store in a way that would be reasonable, fair, profitable, or for those of us who are practicing the realities of the ecosystem of selling in WordPress, and I'll give you an example of that, would work. Here's an example of how all the things you guys talked about are theoretically possible in the right hands, but don't work in today's WordPress. We talked about the example of that other fellow who tried to jam a freemium, like sample product into his plugin, and the world came down on his head. With launch flows, I was very reluctant to take the initial advice of two of our show members, right? Vito and Andrew both had suggested there's a really interesting phenomena happening with lifetime value deals with software. Now, I'm very active with all the authors, and they hire me, retain me, talk to me to get them to understand where and how the price point is. I was a little taken aback by this, but here's what's happened. There is like an NFT or cryptocurrency type mindset or a housing bubble mindset running around the WordPress space right now, where people who have no business buying these software plugins and so forth are buying them in droves at the right price only if they're lifetime value. So for example, Launch Flows was at $300 for unlimited single year license. We shifted it to $300 for unlimited. And I did it begrudgingly because I limited it to 2 years support. And I explained, look, I'm not going to marry you guys forever. You don't need more than 2 weeks support, but this is it. What I found was right now, a couple of our JV partners wanted to do unique deals. One of them, at Digital Think, took the plugin and said, I'm going to eat it on my 50% affiliate revenue, and I'm going to give all of that to my buyers mostly. So they're selling the deal for $199. People are buying the plugin that probably have never done a sales funnel, don't know what WooCommerce is, and they're like crazy. And here's why. I think what's going on is they think if they acquire the pieces of the puzzle or the components of a stack, that they own them and then they never have to pay again. And it's weird because if you've got 43% of the CMS market and you did this thing you're talking about the right way, somebody could consolidate a store or a shop where it's all like just buy the bits and bobs you need for a lifetime deal, and all of them are relatively discounted. And if the owner of the store acted with good conscience, unlike Apple, and didn't take 33% or whatever, 60% or whatever it is, then all of the software authors would go in for it, just like I did. Because as soon as this person showed me some of the other LTDs they did, I'm like, look, I'll take a product that was $300 a year, make it $300 lifetime, and I'll take half of that even, because you're going to sell so many of those goddamn things.
Yep.
And so my point is, we are approaching like the apex of the curve with the marketplace of plugins, where you only need a small stack. That's what WP Launchify helps people figure out. And of that small stack, your investment is $600 to $1,200 a year. But so many people would rather spend that money one time, buy all the pieces. And if somebody could capture that mindset and stick it into the Elementor Wix, new version of WordPress, yes, it would work. But as long as it's over here where you've got things going on like the backwards ass repository, or Jetpack can do it as they say, but not as we do, nobody's going to feel good about that. You have to do it privately. And that's based upon my real world, like today as we speak experience. Shocking, but true.
No, but it's just a shame. I've been going on about this for years. The actual experience in the theme and plugin is just awful. You're so right, Jonathan. And, your articles, it's in the right spirit. But what is so frustrating is that it falls on deaf ears from somebody who just will not listen and will not move on this. And I don't know what the WordPress community can do, because fundamentally he's a benign dictator. And as soon as he said that in public, he lost all confidence in me, because I don't need some godforsaken benign dictator. I'm not going to support that, Jonathan.
I didn't assume that it would have been automatic that would have set that up anyway. Like, I thought it was just like conceptually. I don't know. We don't know. Like, it's like Jonathan said, it's like it's a concept that he wants to put out there as an idea, doesn't have all the answers to, and then we can discuss it. And there will be, Spencer will say it can't happen because of this, but then someone else might go, well, I can't solve all the things Spencer said there, but I can solve 10% of that problem. And then someone else might say, we can solve 10% of that. And if they get 50% of the things solved, then they might have like a model that could work that isn't the same as what JW said.
It's even worse. It's even worse than that, Paul, because if something was done, something creative, there's some of the revenue that's produced could actually go to a lot of really big-hearted developers that are got a kind of one job plugin but is really important, and they're having to support it, and they're getting hardly any income from it. They could actually spread some of that money around some great developers that are supported for no charge, plugins that a lot of people are using, and they don't get any real recognition.
Hold on. That's my point about how it works now versus how it could work. Right now, I can speak. WP Launchify's point is because of my relationships with the other developers. It's not like we're telling you have to use this or that, but the developer that has a plugin that solves a thing, it makes it possible for somebody to come to the platform to say, oh, I need this plugin. And then they can either take the free one or the paid one, and here's why, and then pay the author. The author, and I speak for almost all of them, is not going to give their trust to anybody at Automatic to sell their plugins. That is never going to happen. But using Jonathan Denwood's model, if a benevolent dictator that ran things the correct way at Wix made a situation where, unlike Liquid Web or one of the hosting companies where you get paid a penny for your $500 plugin, that the authors could actually sell their lifetime deal or their product at retail, or at least a slight discount. Here's the benefit. The platform gets all the goodwill of people coming to one place, like it's a food court, everything I need in one spot, and I don't have to wonder what the hell's happening. The developers, just like on Shopify, by the way, the developers on Shopify love making software there because they're in a recurring revenue model that's forced upon the buyers, but the buyers love it because they don't have to figure out who to hire. Nobody in Automatic has done this yet, and they're never going to, because this whole granola do as what you want environment is never going to get fixed unless there's money at the top. And I think, Paul, you've said this elegantly, and John Denwood, and you put all these together. If somebody at the top says, here's how we're going to reinvent it, and why you can trust us is because we have $15 billion and proven we know how to do this, and he set up the Automatic that should have been, then all of the developers can build their products to solve problems, and they can be fairly bought and sold for,
So I'll leave it at this. My closing thought on it. I don't think you need to start at the quote unquote top with this. My premise for this, I wrote the first piece on decentralization, and my hypothesis for how you go about this is to work directly with hosting companies who would pre-install this. So it's more about figuring out finding enough shared interests, finding enough shared problems to solve, where hosting companies would say, yeah, well, we want to be a part of that. This reduces our cost. This increases lifetime value. And I don't think you need to have this sort of top-down way, nor do I think that's actually the best way to pull it off. So that's my hypothesis at the moment. Who knows? But the way that I'm thinking about this is like, all right, let me spend time talking to hosting companies, validate this, and find out, are there enough who say, yes, if this existed, we would take part in this. And if that's the case, then awesome. If I can help make it happen, then that's what I'd like to do.
All right. So we're going to drop story 6, and we're going to go on to our recommendations of the week from the panel. But before that, we're doing a webinar this morning at around 10:30. If you're listening to this live and you want to join us, me and Spencer are going to be delving into the stack that you need to run a modern WordPress website and marketing automation. And I'm going to throw it over to Spencer to tell us what we're going to be discussing this morning.
Yeah, I mean, today we're going to talk about the final of 3 installments. So we talked about why and how you put together a modern membership site with all the various components in the stack for, again, selling membership, access, marketing automation, using WooCommerce and so forth. Today we're going to talk about how to launch it. So it's the strategies that differ in using that kind of system versus the old-fashioned using email as your channel for marketing. Because email is such a busy channel, you're not going to get people excited when you say, give me your email and I'll send you 65 drip follow-ups to nurture you. Nobody would ever take that today. But you have the ability to learn how today you can use 3 key strategies with a WordPress site to tell people, hey, come on over because there's something really exciting happening. And then they get a customized experience and they get their user journey tracked so that you can continue to give the ultimate benefits with the least amount of wasted time. And then you have a relationship that's real, where you want it to be. It's financially productive and time saving for the end user. So,
right. I didn't put it in the show notes, but I have got a recommendation. The CEO is coming on the show. It's basically something that really helps you with the maintenance. If you're a developer and you're offering maintenance plans or you're around that or individual, it's a company called Watchful. It's watchful.net, and they're offering a package that gives you interface, but the thing is it's at a really very attractive price. So I'm looking at it in a little bit more detail. So like I say, that's watchful.net. So Spencer, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
I do. This is a plugin that snuck up on me, but Luke from my team recommended it. It's called the WooCommerce Stripe Fee in Report plugin. I think it's relatively new. It's 10 months, but it's an esoteric plugin. If you're using WooCommerce to track transactions, and hopefully you're using Stripe, for some strange reason, it doesn't give you a specific, line or total of how much you're paying in fees. Like on a $300 whatever it is, you might pay like $12, but it adds up quickly if you sell a lot of products. So this is a really neat little plugin that was very lightweight and gave me a way to understand the difference between what's my gross sale and what's the amount being paid to Stripe.
There we go. Yeah, I get you. I get it. Paul, is there anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers that's come on your radar?
I think the most recent plugin, it's been a while since a plugin came,
it doesn't have to be a plugin.
No, yeah. Well, all right, 2 things. I got a plugin that I've really impressed with recently was Perf Matters. Brian, I forgot his surname now, who used to work at Kinster. He was on your show a couple of Perf Matters, the performance plugin. Really cool.
Brian Jackson, a great
Brian
friend
Jackson,
of, a great friend of the show.
It's not about caching. It's a different approach. It's kind of like, don't just get all your junk and shove it under a mat and hide it. It's kind of like, let's take a sensible approach to performance first. So I really enjoyed working with that plugin. And then in terms of something that's getting me excited at the moment, I saw on Twitter the other day that there is a new Masters of the Universe He-Man cartoon coming to Netflix, and oh my god, it looked awesome. I'm just serious, it looked awesome. Has any of you 3 seen that trailer?
I'm too old for that.
I did. It was good.
Yeah.
Good trailer.
The trailer was amazing with it. I Need a Hero music, and it's little tear in my eye.
Very
I would recommend Kim's Convenience Store has a new season. If you watch Netflix, that's a hilarious. I think it's got 5 or 6 seasons. Kim's Convenience is
okay. I'll look into that.
Surprisingly hilarious sitcom.
There you go. Jonathan, got anything you want to recommend to the WP-Tonic tribe?
Yeah, check out if you haven't seen it already. Check out WPTrends.co. That's a little publication. Yeah, it's It's quite fantastic. He's been doing some cool stuff in a lot of different places. So I just found that the other day. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And if we're recommending shows, if you haven't seen it already, check out Ted Lasso. Season 2 is dropping soon. Ted Lasso is a fantastic show.
Yeah, all right, there we go. We're going to wrap up now. I really enjoyed it. We've had a great discussion. I really want to thank our 2 special panelists that have joined us, Paul Lacey and Jonathan Wald. Thrown in the deep end, but I actually think we've had a fantastic discussion. And before I close it, please join the WP-Tonic group. You'll find the links all in the show notes. It's where I post extra stuff you won't find anywhere else, and we have a discussion about WordPress and membership and marketing automation. So please join the WP-Tonic group, Facebook group, and I'm trying to grow it, and I'll be doing a lot more stuff in the coming weeks and months to get that really moving. We'll be back next week with another great panel, another great discussion. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.